Hi, I'm Greg from Omen Foils. Today we're going to talk about track position, why it matters, and specifically if you're consistently foiling out or touching down during your jibes, how getting it dialed in could just be a fix-all solution for you.
So to answer this question, let's take a look at the forces involved to keep us in level flight. So first of all, we've got the lift from the foil acting from approximately this position. Then we've got our body's mass, which the foil has to lift. Got our front foot and our back foot straddling the lift here, so we can shift more weight to our front and our back to basically cause the system to rise or fall. I'm going to sum up these forces with one arrow here, which that represents our body's mass. The next thing we have to account for is the foil's lift also has to lift the foil itself, which we've got the weight of it. Let's just say it's 10 pounds acting downwards. And then we've got the mass of the board acting from the center of mass of the board. So similarly, we can take these two 10-pound forces, and we're also going to sum them up right in the middle because of my making the math easy. So now we've got the lift and these two forces acting all in the same direction in a nice balanced system. So you might say, well, why does the track position matter at all, since you can just move the foil back and move your weight back correspondingly, or move the foil forward and move your weight forward correspondingly to stay centered over that lift. Well, that does actually kind of work when you're traveling straight, but we're not traveling straight, we're turning. And that's where the mass of the foil and the board come into play. So the easiest way to show why good track position matters is to explain what happens when it's in the wrong spot. So in this case, I've put the foil really far back. So we've got our lift acting right here. We're going to have our body weight centered over that lift. And then we've got the weight of the foil and the weight of the board acting out here. So what that means is these forces are summed up around there. And then of course your body weight is a little bit further back to counteract that, to balance the force right here. So what happens when we turn really hard, change directions, your fighter jets will say pulling G's, is these forces all increase, which is fine. Your lift can increase correspondingly by increasing the angle of attack of your system a little bit. But because this force is further away, now you've got a lever effect. So what effectively happens, you turn and your board pitches nose down. You've got all this mass out that has all of a sudden gotten heavier. Similarly, if we put the foil too far forward in the tracks, now we've got our lift acting from this position, our body more or less centered. And you can see we've got the center of mass of the board here, center of mass of the foil, which will sum up there. And now when you pull that hard turn, because of that leverage, your board wants to go up and you foil out. Now, in the perfect case where you've got your body's mass, the mass of your board and foil, and the lift of the foil all acting on the same axis, no matter how hard you turn, you're not going to have to actively manage pitch, which is just a way nicer and easier way to ride. So the thing is, how do we find this position? Well, what I'd recommend is this really clever little trick that Kane to Wild came up with. You flip your system upside down, you place your finger in the center of the cord of the front wing and lift it up. So if your foil is too far back, what's going to happen is the center of mass of the system is in front of the center of lift. So when you pick it up, it's going to move like that. Similarly, if it's too far forward, when you try to pick it up by the center of lift, it's going to tilt back like that. So you can just move your foil and the tracks until you pick it up from that point and it lifts straight up. Once you've got that, go out and ride. And when you're turning, pay close attention to the pitch of your board. When you're turning, do you notice that your foil is kind of trying to pitch down on you? Well, in that case, you've got a little bit too much board in front of your foil. So you can just move your tracks forward, or your board and your tracks forward by like 5 millimeters to a centimeter if you feel it's a lot. Or conversely, if you're turning and you constantly notice you're kind of trying to overfoil when you're turning hard, well, it means you've got too much tail sticking out, so the center of gravity of your system is behind that center of lift. So try just moving your foil back in the tracks by like 5 to 10 millimeters again. So you're gonna get 90% of the way there with that balancing trick, but feeling it out on the water is what'll get you all the way in and totally dialed in. So speaking of extreme forward box placement, there is this kind of general trend I'm seeing towards people moving their foils further and further forward. And there are no doubt some benefits of that in terms of swing weight. But I think for the majority of people who aren't on the water every day, the downside of having to actively control pitch, depending on how hard you're turning, far outweighs the benefits you get of that reduced swing weight. So for those of you who aren't kind of at that approaching pro level, you're not on the water every day, I'd really recommend balancing the weight of the foil over the center of lift of the foil. I think you're going to get smoother riding, you're going to feel more in control, and you're just going to enjoy your session more when you get out. And another thing I'll add on this is the reduced swing weight was more critical in my mind when we were using low aspect foils, because a low aspect foil, when you're pumping, goes through a bigger angle of attack change. So that swing weight mattered a lot more. Whereas now we're using these high aspect foils, and when you pump, it's more of an up and down, and there's a lot less of this angle of attack change. So it's more just the raw weight of the board that matters rather than the swing weight. The swing weight plays some factor, but it's less important than in the days of low aspect foils. A final exception I'd make to this rule is for beginners. I think for a beginner, it's really nice to throw the foil as far back as you can in the tracks, if you've got a friend learning or something, and that way they can stand on the board in the position in which it's designed to float. But once they start getting forward speed and moving along the water, it's going to be really hard to get up on foil, which is nice. I think that's the way to do it. You're riding on the water surface, your foil is producing lift, but not enough to counteract the leverage of your weight being forward. So you can kind of feel how the foil turns and the whole system reacts without getting up on foil. And then you can inch it forward, and they can do that thing where they get up on a little bit of a glide and touch down, a little bit of a glide and touch down. And then once they're up and riding and foiling 100 feet, then I'd recommend going right to that position forward where you're getting the balance of the weight of the system right over the center of lift.
One thing we'll get into in detail on our next video in this series is tailwing tuning, but I'll just add that if you change your tailwing tuning to compensate for decreasing your front foot pressure to move your foil even further forward, now what you're going to have is you're going to have that same phenomena where your foil is going to be lifting in turns because your track position is further forward than the center of gravity of your system. And as well, at high speed, you're not going to have enough stability, so your foil is going to pitch down. So now you've got multiple variables to control that are changing with speed, with how hard you're turning. So it just makes your setup a lot harder to ride. Even if you can glean a little bit extra performance out of it, most of us are going to end up going faster, staying on foil longer, and having smoother, more drawn out turns with a really balanced, intuitive setup. All right, so skill testing question for the audience here. If you've got an aluminum mast setup and you switch to a carbon mast, so you effectively reduce the weight of your foil without changing any other variables, how would that change your track position? Would love to hear you guys comment below and have a little discussion on this, and I'll let you know the answer. If you've learned something from this video, please like and share it. It helps please the YouTube algorithm get our content out to more foilers who could use technical content and helps us keep making these videos. Thanks for watching.